Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. This is the month of May. It is Food Allergy Awareness Month. It's also Celiac Disease Awareness Month. So I hope you've been catching my guests that have been talking about those. And Asata Reid, Chef Asata Reid, who also now has a master's in public health, is my guest today. You saw her, I think, back in April or March with Aaron, and they will talk about that program that they work on as well. But we're here to talk about her new book and her Master's of Public Health and why it's so important. So a little bit about Asata before we delve into it. But she is a chef, an author, and a health educator. And she just published a book called How to Feed a Kid. And it addresses many of the issues that parents encounter while raising their children. It is a quick and easy read. It is not a cookbook, but it's for parents to say, right, what's for dinner, right? And to me, it also applies to meeting planners. It applies to me as an adult who actually helps take care of her parents or lives with her parents and designs that. So she's here to talk to us about the book and why feeding kids is such a struggle and how we can make it easier. So hi, my friend. How are you?
Hi, Tracy. Thanks so much for having me on today.
You're welcome. I am so excited about your book. Kudos to you for putting it out.
Thank you.
So why, and I'm going to just jump into this, but that actually was part of your master's degree.
Yes.
Talk about how that all came together and talk about the book.
Okay. So before I even enrolled at Emory, I've been working with kids, feeding kids, after school programs, farm to school, farm to ECE, which is early care education. I've been working with kids and food for over a decade. And parents would literally run me down in the parking lot and be like, how did you get him to eat squash? And I'm always like, it's not magic. This is just how it's presented. If you give kids a reason to eat it, they'll eat it. But you can't really run all that down in a parking lot. This picky eating concept is so pervasive that I decided to study it. And research shows that 50% of American kids under the age of 6 have been labeled picky, either by a parent or a caregiver. That's half the kids in the country. That's a public health concern. So I wanted to dive into that and see what is driving this. And it's fascinating because it's a fairly recent phenomenon of wealthy countries. And a byproduct of marketing and segmenting of consumerism. So there was no such thing as baby food. There was no such thing as kid food 200 years ago. But now if I ask, what's a kid food, you're immediately thinking chicken nuggets, chocolate milk, a Happy Meal, French fries. You immediately go to those things as kid food. But there was no such thing as kid food prior to probably the 1800s. And even then, it was a middle class kind of presumption that these children were somewhat delicate and needed to be served certain foods to improve their temperament, which only certain people could afford. So it's a wealthy country problem, this pickiness that is presented. And since in the United States, since the 1970s, kids have increasingly driven what parents purchase. Kids have a huge influence on the spending that happens in American homes. That doesn't happen everywhere. So because parents are overworked and underpaid and tired, they'll buy whatever the kids want if it gets them to stop whining, stop crying, and eat the food. So
right.
A lot of things that have kind of driven us to this point. But it's interesting. So I studied it.
So that reminds me of a commercial that's out there, and I'm not going to name brands, but they literally, the little girl is staring at the plate of broccoli and she doesn't want to eat it. And then they tease her with the plate of French fries, eat these French fries. And if you eat your broccoli, you get fries, right? Or they or they even completely switched it out. I'm like, that should not, that's like Maslow, whatever. But I don't think that's the way we need to be doing it. And the way that you teach it, I think is really a lot of fun. And I've seen you at work, teaching kids how to, cook and eat and do those things. But how do we get out of that?
So this is what I learned through the research. I mean, everyone's looking at the kids, like the kids are broken, the kids are picky, the kids won't eat vegetables, and that's hands down not true. It's the parents. The parents are the problem. We are 2, 3, 4 generations in of clean your plate, eat your vegetables, drink water before you eat. This weird diet culture that's constantly over micromanaging everything that goes in your mouth. And parents are bombarded from the time they come home. And I talk about this in the introduction in the book. From the time you come home, you are obsessed with how much your baby is eating and how much your baby is pooping. Those are the only 2 things that you're measuring to make sure they're alive and gaining weight. And it doesn't end. It goes all the way through the preschool years. Like, if you want your baby to develop properly, they've got to have the proper nutrition. So add this supplement, add that supplement, because your baby's not getting enough to eat. Your baby's not getting enough fruits and vegetables. And so the parents are paranoid. They're just terrified because they don't know that children self-regulate. And these are my 3 tenets, if you offer healthy foods at regular meal times, that is your job, because kids will eat what they cook, what they're invested in, what they grow. And kids will self-regulate. Healthy children will. Now, if you've got developmental delays or other sensitivities going on, you've got to keep your eyes open for that. But a healthy child will self-regulate. Your job as a parent isn't to tell them what to put in their mouths. Your job as a parent is to make healthy food available. It diffuses the bomb. There's nothing, you can't argue about Oreos if they're not in the house.
Right. Well, I don't buy that stuff. When I lived by myself, I didn't buy it, because if it's in the house, I will eat it.
Yeah.
And it's in my mom's house, so I eat it.
Yeah. See, if it's there, you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
So a lot of this has to do with the behavior of the parents of not trying to dominate their children and kind of overdrive parental mode to make sure you're eating healthy. I'm going to sit here and watch you eat all this Brussels sprouts. That's not the way to do it.
Okay. So, then it reminds me of Jamie Oliver. He went to West Virginia and, and tried to get those kids. He was amazed by the lack of knowledge of what fruits and vegetables were by them and getting them to change. Right. But again, it's the people buying it. The kids are buying the food. Yeah.
That's why the farm to school and farm to early care education work that I do is so important. I think it gives people the warm and fuzzies. They see the pictures on Facebook and they're like, oh, look, kids are growing carrots. Oh, look, kids are eating sugar snap peas. But it's really from a radical place. It's from, I'm going to introduce you to healthy attitudes, healthy habits, and where your food comes from while you're still learning in this like early literacy phase. Just like you're learning about words, you're learning about math, you're learning about the world. I'm going to introduce you to food early on so that no matter where you go in life, you have that to fall back on. You won't be duped because you don't know what food is. Part of the problem that I run into a lot with adults as a health educator is I'm working with adults who have diet-related diseases. Like diabetes is a great example, or kidney disease is a great example, because what you eat immediately affects you, right?
Right.
So when these adults have to revamp their diet, a lot of them are stuck because they don't know food.
Right.
And it is intimidating for an adult to take on something new. We tend to fail at it until we've got our mind together to succeed at it. Well, that can take years for you to get your mind right. Meanwhile, you're getting sicker or more sick or sicker or whatever the word is, right? So my goal is to stop that from happening. Even if your kid goes off and gains the college 10, 15 pounds from eating pizza and tater tots, at least when they get on their own feet, they'll remember, oh yeah, I know what a vegetable is. I know how to cook this. I know what real food is. It doesn't come out of a box or a package. And that's the foundation we want to give these kids. But again, the problem that I'm addressing isn't the behaviors of the kids. They'll eat vegetables. And in a group setting, like in a school or classroom, they have positive peer pressure. They monitor each other, like, you need to eat your vegetables. It's the home that we've got to get parents feeling confident and competent that they can feed their kids, their families, themselves well, because again, if you're focused on what your kids are eating, but you're eating something different, you're causing a divide. They're still people. They're just small people. So you all need to eat the same thing.
I love that. I mean, because it is. I mean, granted, if you have a food allergy, and I know we address this in the book, so we'll talk about that. But if you have a food allergy, that's one thing. But I mean, there's people whose families some of them are vegan or vegetarian. The kids are. Some of the kids are doing that, and my niece is one of them. And everybody else is eating. My sister-in-law sent me pictures a couple of months ago. She made one keto meal, she made one vegan meal, and she made herself a meal. I'm like, why?
That will make you crazy and a lot of work. There's a way that you could do a keto vegan meal that covers everything. And you want to think in broad strokes like that. Like, what do we all eat and focus on that? And that's a big tip if you have a child with a food allergy or anyone in your home with a food allergy. Instead of focusing on, oh, you can't have peanuts. I mean, dang, how many peanuts are y'all eating? There's a whole lot more that you can eat. So let's focus on what you can eat. If we have to eliminate dairy, let's find a substitute and then let's carry on. We don't have to pump the brakes and just, make a big deal out of what we can't eat. And so it would really help parents, like in that example, to plan meal planning. And I have a really quick and easy breakdown of how you can do some simple meal planning, save some money, but save your sanity because you're not a short order cook. And what ends up happening is all this resentment starts building up. If you're the mom or the dad or the parent who's handling the food, you're like, why am I in the kitchen all the time? Why am I constantly thinking about food? Why are you rejecting this food that I went through all these hoops to produce so that it doesn't kill you? And you're sitting here pouting over it because you don't like it. All these dynamics can be avoided with a little bit of planning and a little bit of buy-in. This isn't the parent's problem. This isn't the child's problem. This is an issue the family has to work through together and resolve. So the kids need some buy-in and they need some say-so. The adults need some buy-in. They need some say-so. Let's build a menu that we all agree we're going to eat this week. If it's not your favorite, but at least it's not going to kill you. Let's do that.
I'm like, how can I apply that to meetings? How can meeting planners use that same philosophy too?
I think if you have a survey at the top about what people are allergic to and what their food preferences are, then hey, we've got a group here that's like 50% vegetarian. Let's prepare a meal that the add-on is chicken.
Right.
So the meal is vegetarian. The meal is gluten-free. But then we have an add-on that's chicken. And it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And like at a meeting, it's not like you who eats gluten all the time, eating gluten-free for 3 meals or 6 meals over the course of 2 days is not going to be detrimental to you. Whereas for me or for somebody who has celiac disease, it would be detrimental to eat it. So
and a lot of times I think that if you served 3 gluten-free meals in a row, a lot of gluten eaters wouldn't even know.
Right.
Because they're not walking around like, ooh, is that gluten? Ooh, is that gluten? Right. They're like, ooh, let's eat. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's the same thing with vegetarian meals. Like if you don't go and announce it and it just doesn't have any meat on it, who's going to know? They're just like, wow, it's delicious. And they'll keep it moving. So, and that's how I present vegetables with kids. I don't label this stuff as healthy. This is just beautiful, fun, colorful food that's delicious.
Right.
There it is.
My guest last week, Mike, he got diagnosed with celiac disease at age 40, but he went and got his daughter tested at age, I think it was 3 or 4. And he's got a documentary out there called The Celiac Project. And it's a documentary of his life. But what they said in the documentary I thought was amazing is that she now has the basis of how she has to eat for the rest of her life at 4.
Yeah.
And I think that's with, food allergic kids or just kids in general. I'm like, you teach them how to eat without being scared of it. I mean, they need to be cognizant. Hey, if I'm dairy free, if I'm allergic to milk, I can't eat this, this, and this, and this is what I can, they have to know about it. But like what you're doing with this book, it's getting them the fundamentals.
And if you have that, imagine how it prevents so many years of suffering.
Right.
So like that was an example in my book. Actually, there was a little boy in one of my classes. He was a pre-K kid and he had started eliminating foods and his parents were like, he's picky. He's a really picky eater. He doesn't eat anything. he would eat vegetables. And since that's kind of what the focus is in my pre-K class, I didn't see all this pickiness that they were talking about. But 2 years later, the mom came to me and said that he has a gluten intolerance. And he had self-selected things and he had eliminated things that were irritating his tummy, giving him bowel problems, causing him all this discomfort. He figured it out before he
as a pre-K person.
In pre-K, he started saying, I'm not eating macaroni and cheese because I don't feel good when I eat it. And that should have told you, because kids love macaroni and cheese.
Exactly.
Right? So that's like, he stopped eating sandwiches. He stopped eating kid food because it's all wheat-based.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then 2 years later, they finally had a diagnosis that he could not, he was gluten intolerant. So.
Wow. That's amazing. And it actually reminds me of my niece years ago who took herself off of dairy because she realized that it was causing her stomach aches and a variety of other things. And she's now eats mostly vegan. But I mean, she was like 11 and she did that.
So, but from a parent standpoint, it could be like, you're picky. But you're not picky if you don't eat mac and cheese. You're not picky if you don't eat sandwiches. You're not picky if you don't eat cheese or don't drink milk. You're picky if you only eat like 2 or 3 things and that's it. Right. Otherwise, children are going through a learning process, and there's something I call the eggplant file. When a kid gets exposed to something new, they create a file. What we do when we expose them to something new is we say, "Did you like it?" And they're like, "I don't know. I'm 3. This is new to me. I don't even know what this eggplant thing is." And so they have to have multiple exposures, right? To like 12, 20, 30, sometimes years worth of exposures before they even know whether or not they like it.
Right.
They don't know. So stop asking them if they like it and just ask them to try it. If they want more, they'll eat more. Right. What we want are kids that are food explorers. We want kids that want to try new things. We don't want children to be afraid of food. Mm-hmm. So we encourage them to taste. But there really shouldn't be a lot of pressure to finish what's on your plate. If they're hungry, they'll eat. In fact, I've said that in meetings and had pediatricians stand up and clap on more than one occasion.
Really?
Yes. If a hungry child will eat. They're like, parents have all this guilt and all these emotions around this food. But food is morally neutral. It's not good or bad.
Right.
It either is food or it's a food-like substance and it's like junk food. Either it's food or it's not food. You want to feed your kids food. There's that. Okay. But if you're offered food and you're hungry, you'll eat it. And what we tend to do is force them to eat and they start to ignore their internal cues. This is the first step towards chronically overeating.
Okay. Talk about that.
Well, chronically overeating, America has a portion control problem. We wouldn't know a portion if we fell over it because we've been told to finish what's in front of us. Right. But portion sizes have grown since the 1950s so that today's cheeseburger is double the size of the 1950s cheese. Heck, the apples are double the size of the apples. Like the food is huge, right? So your portion distortion is off the chart. And if you're eating what's in front of you, you're overeating. You don't know when you're full because you eat fast. Right. You're in a hurry. You're eating in the car. You're eating standing up. You're eating on the phone. You're eating on the computer. You're eting and talking to people at the same time. So you're not even paying attention to yourself. So you don't even know your full cues. Some of us have kind of broken our regulator to the point we don't even know when we're hungry. We've ignored our hunger cues for so long that we don't even know we're hungry. And you'll end up having your first meal of the day around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Your body was hungry when you woke up, but you've learned to ignore all the feelings associated with hunger. And you've learned to ignore all of the feelings associated with being satisfied or full. But the first step of that is really pushing food on kids who aren't hungry and insisting that they eat something because you feel like the food is morally positive. You have to eat your broccoli. If you just eat your vegetables, you can go. Okay. How about you make a balanced plate and then let the kid figure out what they want to eat?
Right.
And with little smaller children, it's better for you to keep a journal of what they eat over a week than look at what they eat plate to plate, day to day. Because kids go on food jags and they'll like live on blueberries and yogurt, like manna from heaven. And then all of a sudden hate blueberries and yogurt. It's like, but you just liked it yesterday. So it's going to skew your view of what your kid is really eating. But in between blueberries and yogurt, there's other stuff they're eating. Right. Sometimes even right off the floor, like, oh, okay, that's going to count. Chicken nugget off the floor. Great. That's protein. Let's keep it moving.
Okay, this is so many things in my head that so could apply to meeting planning, events, and catering. I mean, paying attention to what your attendees like and don't like, what they ate off the buffet and what they didn't eat off the buffet. Don't keep ordering croissants if nobody's eating the croissants, right?
Yeah,
And
you're throwing money in the trash. Yes.
Yeah, and food in the trash.
Yes.
And money in the trash can. Yeah, with it. But even like, I was talking to somebody earlier this morning, and she was like, "Oh, what was it that she said?" I'll think about it. It just popped into my head and right back out. But it's like understanding what your attendees like and dislike, just like your kids, is so important for managing your food and beverage budget, and that helps with your home budget.
It does, because you're not wasting food. You're not. Back to the portion distortion. Your stomach is the size of your fist, roughly. So even if you doubled that and you had 2 fists, where you were just feeling hungry, so you ate that much. And now compare that to what goes on a plate, right?
Right.
When we fix plates for kids, we pile that food on. A lot of times, just the visual alone is a turnoff, because they're like, "That's a lot of food." Their stomach is literally this big.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're talking about spoonfuls of food. Like, here's a spoonful of peas. Here's a spoonful of mashed potatoes. Here's half a slice of meatloaf. If they want more, encourage them to ask for more, because that means they're reading their body cues. Yeah. You know what? In fact, I am still hungry. Okay. What would you like more of?
Okay. So what about breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I mean, we should be doing that, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or
you want to offer food. With your younger people, they probably need to eat every 3 hours or so, because their stomach is so small and it can't hold all the nutrients that they need, and they're very busy people. They're very busy, so they're burning those calories. So you want to offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 2 snacks, and you want them to be balanced. A handful of cheesy fish-shaped crackers alone is not a balanced snack. And it's not to demonize the fish-shaped crackers, but those fish-shaped crackers are just carbohydrates. You need to have some peanut butter and apples to go along with that, so that have a fruit, a protein, and a carb. So your snacks need to look like mini meals with like 3 of the 5 food groups. Your plate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, try to get 3 to 4 food groups. And if you have to eliminate something like grains, or if you have to eliminate something like dairy, then you compensate for it in other ways.
Right. So, and the MyPlate concept now is that the protein is kind of like the accompaniment, like the quarter of the plate, where vegetables and stuff are half the plate, and correct me if I'm wrong, and a grain is a quarter, and then the protein is a quarter, and then you've got your glass of milk.
Right. So roughly a quarter of the plate goes to fruits, vegetables, grain, and protein. But every meal doesn't work out like that.
Right.
I always say, and I got this from the diabetic MyPlate, make half your plate vegetables. You can't go wrong.
Right.
If you fill half your plate with vegetables, then provided your plate's not the size of a Thanksgiving platter, then you don't even have room for the rest. So get your quarter grains, quarter protein, and keep it moving. You actually end up saving money when you shop that way, when you think that way, and when you cook that way, because you're not spending so much money on meat and dairy. Meat and dairy are the 2 most expensive things on the shopping list, whether that's home, whether that's catering, whether that's restaurant. You're paying a lot of money on meat and dairy, and people think they're spending a lot of money on fruits and vegetables. But if you actually look at your receipt, you would spend $20 on the meat for fajitas, but you'd only spend $7 on all the vegetables that go on fajitas.
Okay, I want that little one to come tell me what she likes to eat.
Come here. What do you like to eat?
I like to eat carrots.
Carrots?
Watermelon, apples, and grapes, and every type of fruit.
Okay. Watermelon, apples, and grapes, and every type of fruit.
Good girl.
But I mean, less people think that, I'm out here in the middle of a garden feeding my children tomatoes right off the vine. She also loves tater tots, fried fish. There's ample junk food, cheese pizza, there's a balance that takes place. But again, it's because I'm not really trying to demonize any food in particular. If it's food, go ahead and eat it and enjoy it.
No, okay. I mean, and that's good because it reminds me of a meeting planner a long time ago. She said, my group, and she's listening to my class, and I'm like, let's think about eating healthier, things like that. And she's like, but my group is really overweight and they like to eat unhealthy, food, hamburgers, hot dogs, all of that stuff. And I said, the mentality that I have around that is that you're planning their meals for 3 days, 3 days, right? And it's their money that they paid into doing this, and you're spending that money. But under your care, you're feeding them healthy because you want them to come back next time. And you're showing your care for them. And if that is not enough for them, then let them go off to eat at that fast food place or eat something else that they want to eat. But under your care, because you are planning the meals those couple of days, this is what you're going to serve, and some people might get up in arms about that. And actually one guy actually said to me, he's like, you're telling me about all these people with dietary needs. 1/3 of the population has dietary needs. What about the other 2/3? I'm like, you can eat everything on the buffet.
You can still eat. So
exactly.
This comes up with catering, but this comes up with kids and parties.
Mm-hmm.
Kids don't go to birthday parties for the cake, right? Because there's so many kids going to each other's birthday parties. They're all getting cake. Kids don't go to birthday parties for that pizza, the delivery pizza, because they all get it all the time. It's at the soccer games. It's at the book club. It's at everything. So that's not why they go. Kids go to the birthday party for the party. Kids go to the barbecue for the socialization. They want to run around with their cousins and hang out and have a good time. They're really not there. So if you're thinking that you can't have a party without cake, you're wrong. And so when certain schools and preschools have stopped letting cake come into the room, they find other ways to celebrate their birthday. But it's now about that person, or sometimes they celebrate whoever had a birthday that month. It's about them. It's not about the cake or the cupcakes. And and I've seen this, I've done it. If you bring fruit salad to the party, it will get eaten. If you bring in a watermelon and cut it right in front of them, I don't know what's so magical about kids and watermelon, but cutting that sucker open, they will eat it to the rind. There won't be a seed left. Okay. So you don't really.
The watermelon seed's going to grow in my body.
In your tummy. You're going to grow a watermelon plant. But yeah, so it's, you just think outside the box, bring in a bunch of strawberries and watch them disappear.
Right.
And you'll be more popular than the cupcake mom because strawberries are just a big deal with little kids. Who knows why? So back to your buffet, if they like burgers and hot dogs, have a black bean burger.
Right.
The way you arrange your buffet says a lot too, because people like to pile onto their plate. So you lead with the salad, you lead with the fruit salad, you lead with the coleslaw, you lead with the baked beans that don't have all this sugar and bacon in it. By the time they get to the meat, there's nowhere to put it. That's also a catering trick, so you save money and not have to put out so much meat. But burgers, fine. Black bean burgers are delicious. You may introduce somebody to something they've never had before and that they love. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the tips that you have in the book, if you haven't already, the ones that you haven't already covered?
Oh, yeah.
So we need to.
The book is arranged for parents who we just don't have time to read. Let's face it. So the chapters are pretty short and the chapters are subject driven. So Picky Eaters is the first chapter.
Okay.
We have a chapter on solving the dinner dilemmas, because some of us have got kids and 19 different kinds of practice, and just getting dinner to happen in a way that doesn't make people crazy is its own issue. And we talk about the benefits of why families should dine together. I'm not saying you got to have this Brady Bunch moment where all of y'all are at the table every night. That's not even realistic. It may be one night a week. It may be one night a month, but it's family dinner time and it's full stop, period. You can bring a friend, but you're going to be here. And the expectation is there. Children respond to expectations. People, period. Children are people, respond to expectations. And I learned that one time when I saw a little boy having an issue. And the teacher simply got down on his level and said, "We don't do that in this classroom." He was like, "Oh, okay." And he straightened up and got his act together. Like, that might work over there, but that's not going to work right here. And it's like, oh, okay. So it works to have an expectation, like family dinner is going to happen. This is when it's going to be. Let's all check our schedules and figure it out, and we'll make it happen. Balanced nutrition, because that's a big question mark for a lot of parents. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to be eating. So I make it simple. I use the MyPlate diagram, because that's the simplest tool I've ever seen in my life. Like you can eyeball a plate and figure out if you're in the ballpark or not. How much is enough? The portion control. I talk about ages and stages and how children eat differently as they grow. I talk about how small the stomach is and how you can feel like you're feeding your kids. I talk about meat-free kids because kids today are woke. They have such a consciousness about the world, the environment, animals, sentient beings. A lot of kids stop eating meat and animal-based products, even outside of allergies and diet-related disease. So, you know, as a parent, you want to honor your child, but you don't want to throw your family into chaos. And how do you do that? That chapter actually started because a guy named Joe had a barbecue stand. And his, you know, meat was his world. And his daughter decided she was going to go vegetarian. And he was like, huh? What? She's going to perish. And it's like, no, she'll be fine. So we even talk about there's a vegan MyPlate diagram, you know, so there's some of that for support. Healthy
so can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah.
What, because we were actually having this conversation. This is a conversation I was having before I got on with you. Is like, well, they're so used to eating just the salad at a restaurant. Yeah. Well, why can't they just be okay with that? But what is a vegan MyPlate? What does that look like? Well,
it's the only difference is dairy isn't going to be dairy because the MyPlate diagram doesn't say meat. It says protein.
Right. Okay.
You can get protein from beans, nuts. But there's protein in whole grains. There's protein in broccoli. There's protein all over the place. But if you pair it well, you'll get enough protein. So the point in that chapter is to point parents in the direction of how do I pair it well? What do I make sure my child is getting plenty of? Is it peanut butter? Is it, you know, tofu? Is it black bean burgers? Is it, you know, jambalaya that's made in a vegetarian fashion? So you got whole grains in there as well to go along with. Meat substitutes, if you want to go into that direction, you know, just make sure that you're getting the nutrients in a balanced form. And once you get the hang of it, it's not so tough. So part of it is to have a childlike mind about it. Be adventurous. Like, oh, we're going vegetarian. Cool. Let's find some food we like.
Right.
Let's find some recipes that we can work out. Let's discover some new ways of cooking that we haven't done before. Be open and look at it as an opportunity to learn versus feeling like this is a burden. And just like you said before, if someone's an omnivore and they eat everything, they eat black bean burgers too. I'm an omnivore and I eat black bean burgers. So it's not like we're burdening the family by having black bean burgers this week. Everyone can enjoy it. Or gluten-free buns or whatever it could be.
Well, and now I'm jumping back like 20 minutes ago, but you said, you know, look at what you can eat. And I used to have a card that I'm like, because I'm yeast, so no yeast, sugar, vinegar, dairy, peanuts, pistachios, pork, gluten, you know, and chefs look at that and moms would look at that and go, what the heck am I supposed to feed my kid? And even moms who have kids who are allergic to, you know, 12 different foods, they're like, what do I feed my kid? Well, on the other side of my card, I said, this is what I can have. I can have gluten-free grains. I can have fruits and vegetables. I can have rice. I can have, you know, black beans. I can have legumes, you know, and I actually gave it to a chef Jason. I don't know where he is now in Atlanta, what venue he's in, but he's like, this helped me so much because it opened up his eyes to like what you just said. Let's see what we like.
Yeah. And then when you give a chef a list of food, then that's like giving them the keys to the toy box, you know, because now they can have their little Iron Chef moment and create something fantastic. But if you give them a list of what they can't have, it kind of shuts the party down. But that's just in relationship and conversation anyway. If we talk about what's possible, everyone gets creative. If we talk about what's limiting or what our limitations are, it shuts the flow of creativity down. So I definitely think that creating a list like that is beneficial if you're eliminating anything out of your diet. I wanted to hit on a couple of other chapters.
Yeah, please do.
Because they just contribute to pickiness that isn't pickiness. I have a chapter on teeth because I learned that firsthand. And I was just talking to a 6-year-old last weekend. She's missing her 4 front teeth. Now, imagine the impact of that on taco night when you serve crunchy tacos.
Or even your daughter's carrot, you know?
Yeah, even just carrots. Yeah. So if they're missing molars, which happens kind of later, they'll drop like 3 or 4 molars all at once. You've got these like bloody nubs in your mouth. Imagine how that impacts the flavor of your food or your ability to chew or things getting stuck all up in there. So actually, I have the chart of when teeth fall out and when they grow.
Wow.
So you can even see that and understand like, oh, my 7-year-old's not picky. He's just missing 4 teeth. He can't chew. This is not fun for him. Or if he's chewing things in a chunky way, it's causing all kinds of gas and indigestion. His stomach doesn't feel good. And, so teeth is a serious consideration. And I also have
Who would have thought?
I lived it. That's how I knew. I was just like, and they don't have like the lexicon about their personal, what's happening in their bodies. They don't have the ability to talk about it. Right. So they just sit at the table and sulk, and you'll be mad at them for sitting there and sulking, but they can't tell you what's happening because this is the first time it's happened. Right. They're not that self-aware. It's our job as parents to check that out. So that's why I put the teeth chapter in there. I also have a chapter on bitter greens. The truth about greens. You're like, oh, kids don't like green food or kids don't like green in their food. They will sit there and pick it out as if they had tweezers. But green foods are high in calcium, and that's bitter. And children can be like super tasters. Their little taste buds have not been scalded off by hot coffee. They have not been adulterated by cigarettes and bourbon. Their little taste buds are pristine, and they have more of them because you come here with a lot and then they go away as you age. So, the perception of taste mellows as you age. So they're tasting compounds that we take for granted. I think broccoli rabe is amazing in its bitterness, its stringency. I think it's great to cut through cream sauces or heavy meats. But he's 11 now. He still doesn't like it. But at 9, when I introduced it to my child, you would have thought I was trying to kill him. You literally would have thought I tried to murder him because the bitterness just blew his mind. He's like, why do people eat this? So that's what's going on. And I talk about taste buds. I talk about super tasters, just so that parents are aware. I talk about feeding athletes, and I've seen this firsthand with my now 16-year-old as he developed into, quite the athlete. I can't feed him enough. Like he burns it as soon as he eats it. And so when you're talking with athletes trying to make gains or trying to gain weight, for wrestling or whatever competition, or on the flip side, gymnastics, if they're trying to stay underweight or small. I mean, these are things you have to talk about. I get it. I get your caloric desires, but I also understand your caloric requirements. So let's meet in middle ground and figure out how we can do this without dieting, without binging, without carb loading, and things that build up unhealthy habits. Yeah.
Wow. Everybody should buy this book. I mean, because I think it helps parents, but it would help me, really think about, because I was going to say, chewing, because if our stomachs are only this big, thinking about that plate of food, I mean, that's a lot of food to put in that little tiny thing.
Well, it stresses. There's that.
But we need to chew.
You need to chew. And if you're not chewing, it causes digestive upset. I mean, that ties into mindful eating, which is a whole nother conversation that I could get into because it ties into, I'm also a stress management coach, and food and stress have a very interesting relationship. But I represent that. But chewing, being cognizant of what you're eating, even listening to yourself when you're hungry and saying, what do I want to eat? You end up eating differently. Nowadays, they call it intuitive eating instead of dieting. But slow down and ask yourself, what is it that I want to eat? Have these conversations with your kids. Someone asked me about kids and vegetables, and I was like, well, the expectation is that there will be vegetables at just about every meal. There's some days where I'll throw some meatballs and sauce and pasta together and roll, and we're going to call tomato a vegetable tonight. Yeah, that happens. But generally, there's going to be a vegetable present. So why not ask the kids which ones they want?
So what a novel idea.
Yeah, so that I'm not wasting my time in the kitchen cooking something y'all don't want to eat. Let's not do that. So guys, we need 3 vegetables for this week's shopping list. What do y'all want? Right. And that's that buy-in. That's that, oh, I have some say in this. If you want to take it a step further, bring them in the kitchen. Okay, you were the one that wanted corn. Come in here, shuck this corn, and you throw it on the grill or put it in the oven or put it in a pot. Or you wanted rice, so come in here, measure out the rice and stir it in a pot. And now the child has ownership over it. And the only negotiation I have with that is whenever the vegetable shows up at the table, we don't yuck it because your turn's going to roll around and you don't want anybody going, ooh, boo, green beans, you chose green beans,
right.
Game. So respect it, eat it, and move on.
Oh, there's so much to learn from you.
That's why I had to write a book because I could not relay that in the parking lot when that woman chased me down about the squash. I was like, girl, okay, you know what? Let me just write a book.
Well, and I'm sure, like with your master's and your thesis, and I know you told me before the show, the thesis is basically the same book, right?
It was different because it was the research that went into picky eating and how picky eating evolved in the United States because it wasn't a thing. It's a phenomenon. So when something isn't a thing and then it shows up in the mass population, it's a phenomenon. So I unpacked the myth of picky eating. It's a phenomenon that exists here in the U.S., picky eating in kids. It exists in other places too. And it looks a little different in other places, but it's permeated the culture of the United States and is widely accepted as a belief by this population. People believe children are picky. And I'm here to say that that's not really what's happening. What's happening is adult behaviors are having an influence on the what, why, and how children eat and their food and mealtime behaviors. So that was the research. And then this is the application and is based on probably a lot more my experience in working with kids for so long, but is backed by the research. So I guess if you wanted the research, you'd have to go read my thesis. It's at Emory University, Rollins School of Public Health in their tome of a virtual library. That's all the research. And then this is the application.
Move that over into front of the camera some more. There we go. How to feed a kid. Woohoo! Chef Asata Reid. Oh my God, I love it. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I mean, oh my gosh, we've known each other for more than a decade.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pinpoint it, how far back it goes.
I know but that's okay. It's okay.
You look great, darling. You look wonderful.
Thank you. So do you. So it's been like 30 years we've known each other. But yeah, no, I just love it. And I think, and again, everybody, I mean, get it on Amazon right now. And actually, I'll put the link up with the video so you guys can get it on Amazon. And, buy this for your family. And you and I were chatting beforehand. It could actually apply to older adults, right?
Yeah. And so I'm in the sandwich generation. I've got my kids and my aging parents, more and more my aging parents. And one of the reviews on Amazon was actually someone who cares for her mother with dementia. And she applies some of the same principles, like, okay, just offer healthy food. Let her select of these healthy foods what she wants to eat and offer it more often, smaller portions more frequently. Let her genuinely be hungry and not fill her up necessarily with supplemental drinks and things. Okay, if we're not doing that, then she'll eat more when it's time for meals. Making sure that the snacks are nutritious, asking her what she wants to eat. You just things you just take for granted, but it's been able to help people caring for elders. And it also adults just see themselves, particularly in that budgeting chapter and that balanced nutrition chapter, because we get so much information about what we're supposed to eat, how we're supposed to eat. Bless you. So that if you can break down nutrition to be like 5 food groups and balance it out, like just keep it simple. And then I show you how you take that MyPlate model, apply it to your grocery list with a sample list, and then you're off to the races. The bottom line is if you want to be in control of your diet, you're going to have to cook. There's that. But that doesn't mean you have to cook all the time. And when you eat out, and even when you're at a meeting, you can choose from the buffet, you can choose from the menu, and you can select those things that are best for you. Pause before you fix your plate and ask yourself, what do I want to eat? What are my goals? Am I trying to be healthy? Am I trying to lose weight? Am I trying to, stay my blood pressure at a good, okay, whatever it is, based on what you see available, what do you want to eat? What do you really want to eat? I know the burger looks good, and maybe the burger is good. Maybe it's good for you, but maybe it's not. But you won't know if you don't pause and ask yourself.
That I love that. Yesterday I ate at an event and they had combined the vegan and gluten-free meal together. And it was a tofu sandwich on gluten-free bread. And I am not a tofu fan. And and I am not celiac, so I'm going to let everybody know that. So I did eat the other sandwich, but it was salami and cheese and a muffalata, right?
Mm.
And so I used the lettuce and I made myself a lettuce wrap with that meat inside. And so because I'm not celiac, it doesn't matter. It's okay for me to eat the bread, not to eat the meat, because even though it touched the bread, because I'm not going to do the tofu. But so I made the conscious choice of this is what I'm going to do. And I ate an apple and I had some chips to go with it. And so to me, it was I got what I needed.
Yeah. But you also have the know-how, to do that. And I think that's a whole nother conversation, is being able to pick apart a menu or pick apart a buffet and identify what it is you need to eat for your needs.
Right. Yeah.
And that goes back into this sort of a response to this diet culture that wants us to have this monolithic way of eating. Like, everyone needs to eat chicken breasts and steamed broccoli and brown rice. And that's just that ain't it, folks. Sorry. That's not living life.
No, you can lose weight eating good food and flavorful food, or gain weight doing the same thing.
Yeah. Or just be healthy and vibrant and thrive and enjoy your food. And that's the whole point of the book. I want parents to come back to the table. I want families to come back to the table. I have so many memories around food that are positive and positive associations, and just in working with kids and families and adults, there's a lot of negativity out there. And you won't have a healthy relationship with food if you have all these negative associations. So let's work to build some positive associations and give our children and equip them with healthy habits that will last them a lifetime, number one. And number two, they'll pass on to future generations. That's why I got into this work. I saw an avenue. I saw a means to use my skills to get in and change the health trajectory of the future by working with kids. But if you're going to work with kids, you got to work with parents. You got to work with families.
Well, and I think that's really important for people to understand, is like, the kids aren't actually buying the food. So we need to pay attention to that. I will provide the link to everybody to buy the book on Amazon.
Thank you.
But how can they find out? How can they get in touch with you? How can they find out more about you? And how can you help maybe their kids or them?
So I have virtual cooking classes. We've been doing those since the pandemic started last year, and those are fantastic. We cook real food. We're not in there making cupcakes and cookies. We're cooking like dinner or breakfast, like for real, for your whole family. And you can find out about that at chefasata.com. And I'm also on Instagram. chefasata.lifechef. But if you just type in Chef Asata, it will come up. So the website and Instagram are probably the best ways to know what's going on. Instagram kind of keeps things updated in real time, so you can find out what classes are coming. And then, just social media seems to be where everybody is. So that's what I am. I have a YouTube channel with videos. I'm on Facebook, but that's really just me doing my thing. Instagram, and then chefasata.com.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to put on my way out.
All right. Where is she? Oh, yes, please.
Because I just walked. If anybody's like, why does she still have that? I lost my tassel. Yeah. We just walked over the weekend. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Chef Asata Reid, Life Chef.
Yes.
Masters of Public Health. Woohoo!
Yay.
Author of How to Feed a Kid. Exactly.
And then, there's actually a person that I made as well.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you both so much. And I will be in touch, because I actually have some ideas for you.
Yay!
Woo! Faces.
Yes, you are on the book.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great talking today and talking through it all. It sounds like a lot, but it really is just a love letter to parents.
I love that. A love letter to the parents called How to Feed a Kid.
How to Feed a Kid.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.